The work the SAG Foundation is doing is enormously important. From the up-and-coming actors to the veterans like myself, the foundation is here to help all of us.
As fellow artists, we've all been there. It's crucial that we remember where we came from and help out however we can.
For over 25 years, the SAG Foundation has been the industry's best-kept secret, and we're out to change that.
As natural storytellers, it's great that we have the opportunity to give back through the children's literacy programs.
A disaster like Sandy really brings it home with how crucial the SAG Foundation is. Their donation drive helped so many people in need.
The seminars and workshops are crucial. Working together is what makes us better.
The SAG Foundation is a nonprofit organization that relies solely on donations to keep these important programs free for everyone.
The SAG Foundation can't do it alone. We need you.
If you need help, ask.
If you can help, give.
We're all in this together.
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 Together, everyone benefits.
Join the cause.
Act now.
Good evening once again. I'm Dennis Baker, LifeRaft Program Director. Oh, I need to really take you guys everywhere I go. I don't get this a bunch of applause at home. Thank you for being here. Thank you for coming. I know it's always a trek in LA in the evening to get anywhere, so we appreciate that you are here. We appreciate anyone that's watching in the live stream. Thank you for viewing. A couple of more announcements and we'll get started. We are on all social media websites, that being Facebook and Twitter at SAG Foundation. You can also follow me at Dennis Baker. We try to get things out ahead of time. So when lists are busy, those are great places to check to maybe get info about an event before the email gets sent out, because once that email gets sent out, we all know how hard it is to get signed up for things. So there's a great little tidbits to check those places out. The most important one is YouTube. YouTube is something we try to utilize by live streaming events and then archiving them on our website. We have over 2.5 years of panels and Q&As on the YouTube page. So it's a huge resource, and it's all free for you, and it's all free for non-union members. Anybody can view it. So what we ask is at the end of the evening, once you turn your cell phones back on, maybe tweet something, a quote that you heard, a thank you, and then also if you missed a question that you didn't get to write down, go home and rewatch a portion of it, and then share it out. Because there's so many people, I've only been here for a year, and I still run into so many people who don't know what the SAG Foundation does. And the only way we can get the word out to every single actor is have you guys help us do that. Make sense? So any way that you can, please do that, and we will be much appreciated. We thank you again for attending. Our moderator for this evening is a great gentleman by the name of Matthew Lessall. He's a casting director. Yay, give him a hand. Woo! He's also the chair of the Artios Awards evening, so he's very in participation with this event and was very willing to come and participate. So let's give him a hand as he comes up.
Hello. This is my first time doing this, so it's very exciting. Hello. Yay, big up, woo. Okay. We have a great panel tonight. I'm Matt Lessall. I'm a freelance casting director, and I'm on the board of the Casting Society of America. And we're here to honor 2 casting directors who are nominated for Artios. Nancy Perkins for Newsroom. And Sara Isaacson for Bates Motel. So the Artios is this Monday night. Are you both going? I hope you're both going.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Good.
A new outfit.
Because there's some chicken that needs to be eaten, and you need to eat it. It's going to be very nice chicken, unless you're a vegetarian, which is then gluten-free. I don't know if you know. Okay.
Oh.
So we're here to talk about casting and the process that we go through as casting directors. And I guess the first question I'll ask both of you is, what was it like your first day on the show? Sara, like you got the script, you read it.
Well, the amazing thing about the Bates Motel pilot was that the first 6 episodes were already written.
Oh.
Because it was originally going to just be 6 episodes, and then they were like, oh, this is really good, it should be, let's make more.
And did you read the first 6 episodes a long time before?
No, I read them all back to back, like in the same day. It was just like, it was so fantastic. Yeah, so I mean, the first 6 episodes were written. Maybe they were 5. I actually can't remember because now I just finished season 2, so I think they were first 6 episodes, and I just devoured them.
So you were actually just hired for like a mini series, essentially.
No, by the time we signed on, they knew that it was going to be a full 10 episode order.
Right. And were any cast members already attached to it, or?
No, although April sort of started a few weeks, sort of technically, I guess, before I did, and she said, "Are you available? Do you want to come do Bates Motel?" And the first person she had said was Vera, and that was the first and only person we went to.
Wow.
Yeah, and she
said yes.
Well, she too had the first 6 episodes and was like, "Of course."
Okay. And Nancy, what happens? I mean, you get an amazing script project like that.
I know, I was going to say, I don't really, I think I can't remember the first day. It's all blur. I was so excited because I came on to do the series, so I saw the pilot and just, loved it. And it's funny, I've always been a big fan of Aaron Sorkin, and for many years I was at a studio and worked with almost every big producer except him. And when I left, I said to a couple of people, "Oh, the only person I never got to work with was Aaron Sorkin." So when I got this call, I couldn't believe it. And then I saw the show and loved it. And so the first day, I think I can't even remember. I think it was all a blur.
Like, did you go, because I think it's interesting. I mean, people don't really understand what it's like what goes through your head and your mind. You literally start the job and people start calling you going, "Are they available?" And you're like, I just found parking. How do you, I mean, literally, how do you start?
There's a lot of office stuff.
Yes.
There's a lot of getting settled, a lot.
Well, picking your associate must be.
Yeah, there was that too. But there's a lot of practical things to figure out. And, you show up and you say, "Well, where am I going to be?" And they bring you to a room. And
they
it's
forgot
empty,
about you because they're like,
kinda
"You don't have a
smelly 'cause
computer."
It's been empty for a while.
Right.
Yes.
And so you're kind of, okay. I remember doing this a lot. Okay. All right.
Yes.
And then you're trying to get organized, and you're meeting all the people on the show for the first time, and there's a lot of people that I was very impressed to meet. Aaron certainly at the head of that list, and so you're meeting the crew, and you're trying to get settled and get your staff settled, and they're giving you paperwork to sign, and HBO's calling. There's a lot of that. Honestly, I can't. I wasn't even kidding. I think it's all a blur.
Yeah.
I remember when I got the second script, I was very excited that it was, more of the same.
Right.
That it was actually happening
Yeah.
to you.
And we just plowed into it.
And so you get that second script, and you're reading. How many roles were there to cast outside of the series regular, and just in that first script?
On my show, if any of you have seen it, there's a lot of recurring characters. So there was more casting initially, because then some of those people kept coming back, so that is a slot you don't have to cast. So at the beginning, we needed to lock in. There's a big group of people on the show that are not series regulars in the traditional sense, but have been in almost every episode. The crew in the booth and in the offices, and so we needed to get, and that's a funny job, to explain to somebody.
Well, are you involved in, both of you, are you involved in this story part of it? Are you meeting with the writers and going, "This character does this over this period of time, think about this"?
Yes and no. Sometimes there was Tune In season 2, Bates Motel. They we cast a role. They told us what the part was, and then 2 episodes later, they were like, "And then this," and you're like, "What?" And I didn't know when we hired this person what was ultimately going to happen and how many more episodes this person was going to appear in. Excuse me. But a lot of this, I commend you for doing what you do every episode, because the availability on all of these actors, just because you already cast them in the first episode, you have to hire them every single episode they appear in. They don't just magically show up. You have to deal with schedulings and negotiating, and that I cannot, and with all those recurring people, I vaguely remember that in my ER days, because there were so many nurses and EMTs. week after week, and you just hope that they are available. But any one of those could could technically go away.
And I have a big chart I put up on the wall with all the people that recur, because, and the other thing is that Aaron is very fluid when he's writing, and so sometimes I will say, is this part going to come back? And he'll say, I honestly don't know.
Right.
And sometimes someone will come in for a little part, and like 3 weeks later, you're reading a script and you see that they're in it.
Isn't it the scariest thing?
Yeah,
I mean,
and they're like in Prague, and then you find out they're in Prague for 6 months shooting a movie,
Right.
because you didn't know when you cast them that they were going to be in episode 7.
Especially if it's kids, if there's kids involved, and you're seeing, parents who fly in for pilot season, and then they're here, auditioning, and you think, oh, this is just a 2-line role, and all of a sudden, they get leukemia and they have to be in 4 different episodes and cry and and be in this horrible situation. You're like, how are we going to do this? What goes through your mind? Has that ever happened to you? Probably on another show like ER or something.
I'd have to think about that.
Okay.
Definitely on Fringe, a lot of people died and then came back 2 seasons later.
Right.
And they were and they were a series regular, another show, and you have to deal with getting them released for an episode because they were so significant to a storyline that they're now bringing back. I mean, on a show like Fringe, which was a wonderful show to work on, nobody ever died. Anybody could somebody could always come back.
Right,
they were in an alternate universe. They could always come back.
Handy.
And almost same with Almost Human. I mean, it's a futuristic show, but you just never know when somebody can come back or when a 2-line role can turn into something really significant.
If you're familiar with the show, this will be funny, but if you're not, it won't make
Not so
sense
much.
probably. But I wish someone had a camera on my face. The last episode of the first season, when we're prepping for it, and I get word, Aaron's written the intern from the pilot into the last episode. It was like a year and a half later. And I didn't work on the pilot, so I didn't even know anything about her. And I was just like, I'm sorry, what? And so, but you know what, luckily, I'm so blessed to work on a show like this because people want to do it. People try to make themselves available.
Yeah, no one's going,
I
I
don't
don't
get
think
like,
so,
yeah,
yeah.
I'm kind of busy. I get, oh my God, let me figure out how to be there if they have a
But I don't think, I'm sure all actors understand this, but just in general, how difficult it is when another actor is on a show and a series regular on another show and they're guesting on your show. What are the challenges that you come up with? Like, what is that process like? Sarah, answer the question.
I got it.
I know you know the answer.
Well, it takes a village to make that happen. It really does. Producers calling the producers of the other show, line producer calling the other line producer, casting executive at the network calling the other network saying, please, can we have her for one more episode? Kathleen Robertson is in season 2 of Bates Motel. I'm not, that's been announced, so I'm not revealing any information. And she's a series regular on Bochco's new show. And so, God bless. And I had to guarantee her out by a certain date, just in case that show started early. And so I had to go to TNT. I had to get a letter. I had to, and because she wanted to do the show so much that, and everybody wanted her so much, and she's so fantastic, that everybody did that for, to make it happen. But some shows may just say, who's the next choice?
Right.
But I love that part of the casting process, the sort of business affairs aspect of casting,
Right.
which is, I love it. John Levy taught me all of that. When I worked with John, he showed me a lot. He taught me a lot about business affairs, and I've just really taken that on, and I love that.
Well, you're always thinking a few steps ahead. Essentially.
Yes, absolutely. Is that?
Well, season 2 for me was made up almost entirely of people in that situation.
Right.
The other thing about working on a show that's so, respected and people want to do is you get a level of people that are also very busy. They're doing a lot of other things. It would just blow your mind if I started talking about, Jane Fonda. Jane Fonda's not sitting home waiting to get the call from the newsroom. She's everywhere. And Hamish Linklater from last season was doing Shakespeare in the Park.
Right.
At the end, it was like, crazy.
Right.
You know, he'd get on a plane like the red-eye Sunday night and work Monday and get back on the plane at 5.
Because you film in LA.
We film in LA, right. Grace Gummer, who was on this past season, was doing a movie the second half of the year.
And Chris is on Mindy Project. How did you?
Yeah, that I.
Okay.
Sorry, John.
That's a secret that she cannot tell us.
That was magic.
Yeah.
So, luckily, again, having a boss like Aaron, you know, there was a lot of you know, Aaron knows Mindy, and Chris wanted to keep doing the newsroom, so we worked around the Mindy schedule because he is a regular on that show.
How does Aaron Sorkin know Mindy Kaling? Like, how does that happen?
It's that talented people club that
Yeah.
you know.
Well, that's the good part, is that a lot, you know, people have worked in this business for a very long time, so those phone calls are a little bit, you know, easier. It's always the phone call. It's like, oh, they're my friend. Will you make the call? As the casting director, it's like, well, why won't you make the call?
Right.
Like, I would. What about filming in Vancouver? I mean, LA seems, you know, everybody, you know, people live in LA. There's lots of flights to LA. I mean, there's lots of flights to Vancouver, obviously. You know? But what are the challenges of casting a show that's up in Vancouver? You've done it twice. You've done it on Fringe.
I've done 5 shows in 5
You're
years.
like the expert.
Oh wait, let's see, 5 or 6 shows in Vancouver the last 5 years. Getting actors approved in a timely fashion to get a work permit. Work permits can take same day if it's a miracle. Some days, some weeks 3 to 5 days. So getting the scripts on time to then put together a session or a list to make offers, making offers or bringing in actors with enough turnaround time to then send the choices to producers, have all of them watch somehow at the same time, all of them agree on somebody, then send to the studio, then send to the network, and then make the offer and hope they say yes. And if they don't for whatever reason, then we got to do that whole process again, all in time for a work permit. And prep is 8 days, and sometimes we don't have the material until day 3 or 4, so moving very quickly.
So you have your, you know, also who can work in Canada list.
Well, I know
right
every
there.
Canadian in Los Angeles.
Right.
Either I've met them or I know who you are.
Right.
I do.
I'm sure you do.
And there's only actually been one time that I've had to hire a Canadian over anybody else due to work permit. Otherwise, I've been very lucky to hire Best Actor Wins. I consider Canadians just as if they were an American, they just happen to be here and they happen to be Canadian.
Right.
But I've never hired a Canadian over an American just because of that, except one time.
Because in film, it's a little different. We have sometimes we have a standard that you have to have like 2.
Right.
You can only have 1 American.
Yeah.
So
Well,
the tax.
Right.
the Canadian casting directors, Clark and Page Casting, who are incredible and do all of our work for us in Vancouver, they have to have sessions for all the parts that we are casting.
Right.
And often I'll have backup sessions for their roles in case they can't find it there. So we work very closely with the Vancouver casting directors. And they do the bulk of the casting because they're there.
So which, as far as guest stars go, because that's what you're coming in for, who surprised you the most so far? Like, which guest star have you thought, this is perfect, I'm so excited about this?
Well, obviously, Jane Fonda was a great get, and but I can't say I was surprised,
right?
Because she was perfect for it, and she's great doing it. I was saying earlier, from season 2, there's a New York actor named Frank Wood that was in 2 episodes. He played, for those of you who saw it, he played the character that misled Charlie about the news story, and in the second episode, they meet up in an underground parking garage like Deep Throat. And it was a tricky scene. It was one of those, sometimes you read the scenes, I mean, with Aaron's writing, they're always wonderful, but sometimes you read and you can think in your head of how it's going to be played, and other times you're not sure. And that was a time that I wasn't sure how that was.
And so how did you, what happened did you just offer it to him? Or?
Yeah,
Okay.
and he was in New York.
Right.
So, but the fun thing is, when you have actors like Frank Wood and Sam Waterston in a scene, it's just
Yeah, you
like,
don't need to worry.
it wasn't like I was nervous.
Right.
I was just curious.
Do you, when you're off, I mean, just as backups, do you audition a couple people just to hear the scene?
It
sometimes, or-
depends. As I said, I'm very, very fortunate that people really want to do the show. Most people we go to say yes, if there's not a scheduling conflict. So usually somebody like that, I think with Frank, we just went to and we got a quick answer. But yes,
Right.
sometimes I'll see some people thinking, I don't know if this is going to work out.
Right. Sarah?
Did Aaron, I'm just fascinated by the newsroom, you guys. Did Aaron know Frank from seeing him on stage?
I think, yes, he did.
Because there's a lot of theater references and musical
Yes.
references in
Well, Aaron
the show.
was went to Syracuse University and was a theater major and knows a lot about the theater. I'm very blessed that way too, because Alan Poole, our other executive producer, is a big theater goer. And then our third executive producer is Scott Rudin in New York, who produces, Broadway shows.
And it's so nice to have producers who are like, let's look at the theater actors and see, there's such depth there. Obviously, they're not available when they're in the show, but it's a nice place to pick people from.
And also, if you've seen somebody do a good performance in a good size role in a play, you have much more of a sense of who you're hiring.
Right.
Sometimes the producers will look at you and say, can he do that? Like talking about where the role's going to go or where the scene's going to go.
Right.
Do you think he can do that? And, sometimes I used to work for a casting director that used to say, I only saw what you saw. Like if she didn't know the actor, she would say, I'm judging on this 5-minute audition the same way you are. But if you've seen someone in a few plays, you have a much broader idea of what they're capable of. Or
Do you ever have to not just with their reel, but sometimes I've cut together reels for actors. I mean, I know it's a pain, but that's what we, sometimes we'll cut together reels because we're really passionate about an actor to be in a show or in a film, and we're finding their best scenes for them. The agency doesn't really do that anymore. Yes, you do it.
I just did that, 2 weeks ago with the film actor who was in Prisoners. Anybody? Dylan? I don't remember what his character's name is, but not Paul Dillon, but the other guy. Yeah? You know who I'm talking about? I forget what his character's name is. Well, I know his name is David Desmelchin.
Oh yeah, he was in My Phone.
He was in, well, don't ruin it for everybody.
David was, I cast him in Saving Lincoln.
In what?
Saving Lincoln.
Oh my God, he was, yes. So I found some scenes from Prisoners because he didn't have.
He's great.
He's wonderful. And so I sort of found a whole bunch of scenes and was able to present that to producers. Well, I think we all do that.
yeah, sometimes, mostly, I would say, more than put together a compilation, sometimes you'll bring up an actor because you've seen him do something and they haven't seen that side of him, and they'll say, well, I don't know, he's not funny or something, and then you run and try to get a clip of what you're referring to yourself so that you can show them a different side.
That also comes, though, with history with producers in terms of trust. And I've been very lucky that I've worked with producers who have said, do you know, what else do you know this actor? And I could say, I've seen them in this movie or this play, and they, that relationship and over the years has been built and trust has been built. And so they say, I haven't been wrong so far when they've said, well, especially if it's not on a demo and they don't see it, they turn to us and say, well, do you think they can do it? And if we know more of their work, then that's helpful. Okay, thanks.
So on Bates Motel, for the pilot, we can.
Yes, please. No, please.
She said when we come out, she was going to keep talking about the newsroom.
So good.
It is so good.
Thank you.
Right? I mean.
Thank you. I think so too.
I steal actors from you. That's
me
how
too.
I met. That's how I met. I forgot her name again.
Don't even.
The girl that you
Melanie
hired.
Papalia.
Oh my God, I loved her so much. I love this girl. She had a scene or two in the newsroom, and I found her and I met her on a general, and she happens to be Canadian. Did you know that?
She's Canadian.
That's an incredibly gratifying thing too. When you use someone in a guest part, and then their agent calls you after it airs and says, "Oh my God, they called him from this movie from seeing him on the newsroom." It's just great.
Yeah.
It makes you feel great. I'm sorry?
What character did Melanie play? She was the girl.
She was the girl who double dated with Dev Patel and Grace Gummer and John
Right.
Gallagher in New York, and she was kind of drunk and kind of rowdy, yeah.
Super fun, super fun.
And she's cast as the lead in The Den for IFC Midnight, cast by me. And she's an amazing person. And I guess the point is that when you find these great actors, you like, especially, I do a lot of independent film, and I see them come through, and I'm like, it's gonna happen, it's gonna be, and you can tell.
You hired David before I did.
I did. But I feel like we see constantly actors that you just go, I just want you to get to you're going to get to the next, it's going to happen, just, hang in there. Is there anybody on your show, like there's Olivia, who is, Freddie's amazing, Vera's amazing on the show, but Olivia's like the dark horse of that show. She's the
Self-taped in London.
Well, this is the amazing thing. So let's talk about self-taping, just in general, because so many people are getting jobs off of self-taping.
So self-tape, of that, let's see, 2 people were hired as series regulars after self-taping. Nobody ever met them. Olivia Cook plays Emma, and we read pretty positive every single girl in town that was legal 18, that could still play like 16, 17, and LA, New York, Chicago, London, Australia, everywhere. And it was like 2-something in the morning, and I'm watching self-tapes because that's when you have the time to watch self-tapes. And I watch it, and it was one of those moments where you're like, is this brilliant, or am I like crazy tired? I don't know, because I've seen it so many
That's when
times,
you
you don't
need to
know.
have somebody with you when you're watching them, yes,
Right.
exactly.
So I loved her. I like love, and I had that moment of, oh, did I just find Emma?
Did you have a bottle of wine next to the bed?
No,
Because
no,
that's
no,
what
no,
I
no,
do.
no, not the no. So I sent it to April and to Jessica, who was our assistant on the pilot, and I was like, "What do you get? I'm not crazy, like, right?" They loved her. We sent it to everybody, and everybody fell in love. And we continue to see people because you have
Just
to,
in case.
and you have to, right? We had a couple other girls in the mix, and everybody just kept going back to her, and we hired her.
And she hadn't even, did you guys, okay, so there must have been a Skype at some point. No, or was it literally?
There was no Skype.
Wow.
There was with Max. Carlton Hughes, Carrie Aaron, the 2 showrunners and creators of the show, and I Skyped with Max, who plays Dylan.
Where was he? Was he working on an?
He lives in Northern
Yeah, he lives in
California.
Northern
He
California.
has like a wine
Yes.
business called Senses, if you're interested.
Of course he does.
So we Skyped with him.
Did he audition, or was it just an interview? Was it an audition?
He had a lot of material that we can watch, and it was a Skype meeting.
Did you ever feel like? Do you ever? I know who he is, but do you ever come across moments where it's like he has to audition, like, or
There was a lot
there
of
a conversation
conversation.
about
There was
that?
lots of conversations about him auditioning, and there's a lot of people in the mix in terms of producers and studio and network, and who needs to see him read and who doesn't. And Carlton and Carrie, they just really felt very strongly that he was the guy. And we also had, we read everybody for that part and watched so many self-tapes, and we just kept coming back to Max and Freddie as well.
I can tell you that when I was at Universal, Hugh Laurie put himself on tape for House.
Right.
He self-taped. He was on.
I think that's on
location for a
YouTube.
movie. Yeah.
And Freddie did audition.
Yes. Well, the Brits, they like to audition. That's what I find. I find that it doesn't matter what level of actor they are. And I also think that self-taping is almost freeing for an actor in a way, because there's no pressure. Like, if you do it well.
You can look at it afterwards and
Yeah.
see if it's what you want to send and all of that. I know when I first started casting as an assistant many years ago, a casting director said to me, "These Brits are great. They don't have any status about it." That was when, I remember she referenced, which is going way back, remember when like Laurence Olivier did a commercial or something, and people in the business here were like, "What is he doing?" But they, I guess
He's
because
making money.
there's less work, they would the Brits would do anything. They would do TV, commercials, theater, movies, and it was only here that actors would, well, I don't, and at that time, if any of you remember this, there was a time when people would say, oh, I don't know about doing TV.
Right.
You know, I'm a
Not so
movie
long
person.
ago.
And so luckily, those have seemed to have come down, those walls have seemed to come down.
Well, I've noticed that I'm seeing a lot of higher level, quote unquote, actors audition for lower budget material that the same kind of level of actor in the States wouldn't audition for and will just meet on. And it, you know, if you can afford if the production can afford the visa and deal with all of that, they get the part sometimes, a lot of the time. So it's an interesting fact. What about, casting freelance now, and having been at a studio for 15 years, what are the nuanced differences that you're finding?
Well, I'll distinguish also, there's a big difference between being a network executive and being a studio executive, I found. And I always preferred being in a studio and never, because at the studio, you know, if you just think of it in the basic way that the studio is the seller and the network is the buyer, so in the studio, you're making the shows to sell to the networks. So the shows would shoot on the studio lot a lot of the time. The producers and writers would have deals at the studio, so you had relationships with them. So I did love the process at the studio in terms of my job, which was, there were times when I would meet a writer and he would say, I've got this idea, I'm going to pitch the network, and he'd talk to me about it. And I would start thinking about who might be good in it. And I would then go all the way to being on the stage the night it was being shot. You know, I would have been through that whole process on the show, which is the part of it that I really enjoyed. I went to a lot of sessions and participated in a lot of the casting, which I know people that work at the network sometimes complain that they don't get to really see auditions very much. And so I really enjoyed that part of it too. The difference with being an independent and doing a series, I do love the ownership of the show. Although I did take ownership sometimes. You know, I tried to be proud. You know, I tried to feel invested in all the shows I did at the studio, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But I do love the ownership of it. I love that it's my show.
Right.
And my name's on it. And
something to be proud of.
You know,
yeah.
I feel very proud of it. I love that it's more focused. You know, when you work at a studio, you're kind of working on all different shows, and you might need any different kind of actor. And I like approaching it as I know what I need this week on this episode. And
the agenda is the show. It's not the studio servicing.
And I'm not also
kind
of going, oh, and maybe that comedian we should make a deal with over there too.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of you're kind of all over the place. But I do like the focus of it. I like the ownership of it, the pride in it, and the community of it. You know, I mean, I'm very fortunate. I haven't done as many series, and maybe it's not always like this, but you know, the group of people that I work with is just great, and from the crew to the cast to the producer, I think they're great. So it's really fun. I really like it. I thought you were laughing at me.
No, I have a little tickle. I'm sorry.
She's so naive. She's just laughing at me. Wait, she works on another show and gets a bad crew.
I like that we get to create the world. We're part of creating a world that the viewers are now watching. Like, I'm very specific. Like, on Fringe, I got to know very quickly the producer's taste, which luckily matched mine, and so I was able to help create the world by presenting a certain kind of actor.
Do you feel like that's where, I mean, often casting directors refer to it as a craft, like casting as a craft. Like, is that where the craft is for you, or
the craft is all over the place.
No, I'm interested because actors call, you know, acting is a craft, and I feel like we feel like it's a creative process. I think that it definitely is a creative process.
Absolutely.
So,
like when I saw that movie, Prisoners, and I saw David in it, and I was like, no, he has to be in Almost Human. He has to be in this world. He totally makes sense. And there are times where I'll see incredible actors that I think are so fantastic and I want to hire, but I just feel like they don't quite fit this world because it's pretty specific. And Fringe definitely was very specific. Whereas on ER, let's say, like, we just needed, like, you know, victims and doctors and lawyers. I mean, and so there was so much more. But the Almost Human is very much a world, and so is Bates for that matter. You really create a certain kind of.
Bates is weird, is odd because it sort of circles back to. It feels like it's pointing back in time. Sometimes it feels like very antique-y somehow. Is that the tone of that? Does that translate into the casting?
Yes.
How? Please explain.
Gosh, it's.
Did you talk about it in meetings? I mean.
No, you mean like tone?
Well, the tone of the show. Do you like sit down with the writers and the showrunner and talk about the tone of the show and
Sort of in the beginning, and like it's so crazy because I know we're talking about the pilot, but I just finished season 2. Again, with both Carlton and Carrie, I learned their taste very quickly. And April, of course, has worked with Carlton for many years on Lost and other projects, and so. I was able to pick up on their taste pretty quickly and got to know the series regulars and their stories very quickly. And so I was able to, I'm not sure how to say this. Big picture, they tell us big picture what's going to happen if we're, for the most part. And so I think we have an idea of, I'm not sure how to.
the essence of it?
Yes.
Well, I feel like, when actors often say that when they're on stage or they're really in the moment, it's a high. And I think when casting directors are like that moment that you're watching another actor in a film and you're connecting with that actor and you're thinking, they're so perfect for my piece, you can't think of anything else that night. And you hope and pray that they're available the next day, that's kind of, it's the same energy, and I think that casting has to be about energy, it does get a little spiritual sometimes.
Well, you do have a sense of your own show and the world of it. For me, I was sort of a news junkie anyway, so there's an authenticity that when it comes to the news aspect of the show that's really important to me, that I watch a lot of news shows on all the cable news networks, and I just look at those people because it's easy to fall into stereotypes of who you think the person is who's coming on to talk about birth control, or who's coming on to talk from the NRA, or who's coming in from, that you want to be careful not to fall into any kind of stereotypes of those kind of people.
You want to make sure they have like an inner life, that they're actors who are capable of having a backstory, and they're even though it may seem like this is the point of you being in the script, but you may be a series regular next season just by chance because he may like you.
I mean, that's one aspect of it, but it's also, like I said, that you want to keep it seeming, the only word I can think of is authentic, that these are authentic people, and it's not someone saying, oh, sure, I can play, a liberal hippie lawyer, or I can be a Southern conservative guy. You just want to make sure that they come through as real people.
I think you've succeeded in that in an amazing way.
Oh,
I mean, for sure, right? I mean, it's magical to watch the show, and it's amazing.
One other consideration I have to have that way, in terms of looking at people for the show, is I'm so blessed with this cast of, monster heavy hitter actors. And sometimes, even a one-line part, I'll have to stop and think to myself, this person is going to be saying these lines across from Jane Fonda, Sam Waterston, and Jeff Daniels.
Right.
And I just have to be aware of that and make sure that not only are they up to the challenge of it, which at that point I usually feel they are because there's someone in the auditions that stood out, but just sort of that they have the weight to not disappear in the scene or not be overshadowed too greatly by those people, because it's easy, as you can imagine, to have that happen.
We'll talk about casting Freddie. I mean, like, to work opposite Vera, who's a powerhouse actor, Freddie,
He was the very first person also.
To come in?
He was the first person that April suggested from the very beginning, and we continued to read and read and read.
With Vera there? Or
No.
Okay.
No, never with Vera.
How does that, do you worry about that if you don't have, she's the lead of the...
No, I don't remember who closed first. I guess she closed first. But even though she didn't close right away, it's not like
Right.
we sent her
you don't
script
have
and
that
she was like,
luxury right
okay,
all the time.
you know, let's close her. And she was back east at the time when this happened, and we were obviously in LA. At the end of the day, Freddie put himself on tape and won it himself. But that was after seeing everybody.
Right, and this is back to where the craft is. It's like knowing that these two actors are going to have that magic spark before they do.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's really impressive that you're able to do that. And I think, like, what you...
Well, I give April a lot
yes,
of
and
credit
April
for
too,
that.
you know, she's
As well. We did it together, you know.
But then going forward and doing all the guest stars as well, how do you, when they come in and audition, how do you, I just want to go back to tone a little bit, because it's an interesting, Bates is a difficult show to kind of figure out what the tone is. Do you talk to the actors before they come in? Some people come, some casting directors are like, I just want to see what you can bring to the audition.
Yeah.
Do you set it up in a different way?
Everybody was able to get the script, the pilot, and it was such a beautiful pilot that actors just came in and
Knew what they were doing.
did their thing, right? And I always like to give the actors the opportunity to do what they want to do, what they have prepared, as opposed to them sitting in the lobby and saying, oh, and by the way, and then list off all these notes and takes away from what they've already prepared. So I would much rather have somebody show me what they have prepared and then give them a note. But the writing was so clear that, I mean, I'm sure it's the same for you. I mean, tonally, it was so clear.
Right. Same thing for you. You just have them come in and do their thing because they know.
Yeah, I don't even show up half the time. No, I'm kidding. For me, I try to get notes from Aaron when I'm setting everybody up. I try to give notes to the agents, not hugely in depth, but just he doesn't want this to be this or something, because there's things that people, when he has an idea in his head of what the character is, I would hate for someone to come in and just unknowingly do the opposite thing and be dismissed for that when they might be able to do the other very well. So I try to get a couple of sentences from him about, and usually it's, trying to think of an example. Last season, a very talented actor named Hamish Linklater was on the whole season as the reporter Jerry that misled everybody. This is going to be so boring if you don't watch the show, as I go into great detail about the plot. And because he turned out to be a bad guy, but we weren't to suspect that at the beginning, that was the main thing Aaron said to me. He said, I want to cast somebody that feels like not non-threatening. Nobody would think, ooh, we got to watch out for this guy. And so you try to convey those kind of things to people so that they come in the right, frame of
You can't
mind.
give too much because you want.
Yeah, I don't want to give line readings or
Right.
dictate exactly how to read the scene, but sometimes someone will come in pre-reads and start doing something, and I'll just say, you know what, can I just stop you because I have to talk. I know he wants her to be really strong in this scene or something.
Do you read with the actors?
I do.
And Sarah, do you?
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Should we do a little something?
Yeah. Can you do something now? Can you do a monologue?
You start.
I'd like to do Jane Fonda's from the Christmas party.
Oh my gosh, so brilliant.
But does it, I mean, do you ever get into, I've been intimidated sometimes by some of the actors I've called in to read opposite of. I mean, it's because it's.
Oh, I
mean,
have
you must
stories.
be. Yeah.
I
mean,
can't imagine.
Yeah.
Because when I was at
Tell us one.
Universal, I would often read with the people testing for the
Oh, yeah.
series regulars. And I've told this story to my friends a million times, but we were doing the pilot of Law and Order SVU. I always have to think of SUV or SVU. And we were going to New York for the upfronts, and because the show was going to shoot in New York, and a lot of the producers were there, and the network people were all going to be in New York, we decided to have the test in New York. About half the actors were from New York and half from LA. And Mariska had this scene where, if I remember correctly, like a peasant woman, a refugee, had been, horribly attacked and assaulted in her country and escaped here, and now the people were, I don't know. But anyway, all I can tell you is the guest star dialogue was like 2 pages of a speech. And with Mariska kind of listening to her retelling this horrific assault by like a gang of,
Right.
And I say to Dick Wolf, well, I'll just edit out, the middle part. I'll just be like a little at the beginning. And he says, oh, no. I want people to, it's very important how Mariska reacts. This is going to be her character on the show. She's going to be listening to people tell these stories. So in front of, not as many people are in this room, but it felt like it. I'm like this. They came for me at night. I'm having to like,
That's amazing.
I cried out in the darkness. And Mariska's going, and I'm just thinking to myself, this is the most humiliating thing I have ever done. I was very effective, though. No, but really, I had to do 2 pages about being assaulted in the,
Well, talk about the testing process when you so you're reading at the test as well?
Yes, absolutely.
Do you get nervous?
No.
Well, because, if it's not these 3 people, you have to go back to the drawing board?
Yeah, nobody wants to go in and test and then not get it.
Right. It happens, though.
We got all of our choices on Bates.
Well, congratulations.
Well, it's also, I think it's different. Cable is probably a little bit different than network. I can't say the same for some of the network stuff that I've cast.
Right.
But everybody we asked for on Bates, they approved.
That's very lucky. Yeah.
I don't get nervous reading with people because they're not paying attention to you, that they're paying attention. The only thing I get nervous about is doing anything that I think might not help the actor read it.
Well, that's what I mean. It's not about you.
Yeah.
It's about them. So you want them to succeed.
And
sometimes
the same test, actually, that I'm talking about with Mariska, I was reading with Chris Maloney, and I can't remember what I did, but I went up on a word or I paused for a second. It was something that only took it was only a couple of seconds, and I saw in his eyes that it threw him. I just saw in his eye for a second, and when he went to say his line, and I just stopped. And I said, I'm sorry, can we stop? And I said, I screwed up, I'm sorry. And I said, let's start at the beginning. And after he got the role, the first time I saw him after he got the role, he threw his arms around me and he said, man, when you said, can we stop and start over? He said, I just wanted to kiss you so bad. He said, because he was, I had said a word differently or something, and I was lucky enough to just catch it in his eyes that I knew that it had thrown him.
But if during a test, we usually have a work session, so I often ask the actor, is there anything you need? Do you want me to sit? Do you want me to stand? Do you want me to take an extra pause? Often I will, always I say, what can I do to help you get this job so I don't have to keep looking?
That's the thing. I don't think people really realize that. We really are the actors' advocates in a different way from what the agents and managers do, but I really feel like if we love somebody, we're going to fight for them. What's the most challenging part of casting Bates? On a day-to-day, what is it that...
I don't find it that
challenging. Or is there
not being able to tell people what's really happening. Getting agents and managers to agree to let their clients do something without them knowing what the part is.
Right. Which is also kind of unfair to the actor. It is.
Well, although secretly there's a conversation that's had between, it's not secret. Ultimately we have the actor reach out to the executive producers directly, and there's a private conversation.
Okay.
And we ask them nicely to not reveal to anybody else what's happening.
Right.
And even my breakdowns don't reveal half of what the part is. So often agents and managers will call and say, they're perfect. And I'm like, yeah, well, except in episode 4, and so she's not perfect. Right. So unfortunately, we can't always tell everybody what really is happening on the show.
Right.
But it's a dream job. It's Carlton and Carrie and Beth Klein. Everybody on the show has been so incredible the last 2 years and have allowed us to be really creative and have approved everybody we've presented to them.
Question time. I think there should be theme music for question time. Just note to, for future reference. This one comes from, it doesn't say. Okay. Ready? Do you have examples of actors who auditioned and made the material their own or unique to all the other auditions?
Have I had that?
Yes, on your show.
Yes. I'm trying to think of a specific example.
Is this a Bates question or
Yes,
just in general?
no, yeah, or, okay, first Bates and then
Sorry,
Newsroom, and
I
then
had my
in
buzzer
general,
first.
because we
Go
might
ahead,
have to
sorry.
expand.
No, I really can't think of anything specific, if you have anything.
No one took the part. Nicola Peltz didn't come in and go, I got this.
Yeah, she read once and never read again.
Right.
She read once, and we kept reading people. Nicola Peltz, who plays Bradley, she read once, and she was wonderful.
Right.
And then, because she is.
Right.
And then we kept reading people, and we kept going back to that first audition, and she got it.
Good question.
Okay.
This one is from Calliope Porter, and it's a question for the panel. What do you think makes great casting? Are there any shows or films recent that you think has great casting?
Oh, sure. Lots.
I mean,
It's the season right now with movies.
I watch a lot of television, so I mean, for me, in the last handful of years, besides the Newsroom, and I'm not just saying that because you're here, I love Southland. Love Southland, Justified. I love like those character-driven pieces with great faces. I really respond to great, smart actors with great faces. I could go on and on.
I know. When you just said great faces, it just made me think about Captain Phillips with
Oh, yeah.
the pirates, who were just, that was so great. Yeah, I just love when someone. I'm trying to think of a specific. I remember when I saw The Killing.
Junie and Libby, yep.
When I saw the lead woman, I just was so, I think I even physically leaned towards the TV. I just thought, who's that? Who's she? And again, because, I do think this is a big generalization, but I think you're able to find that more in cable, because in network television, there's more of a preoccupation with looks and your leads being sexy and attractive. Not that she is not on Killing, she's lovely. But I just mean,
The freedom.
it was just great to see a woman in a role like that wasn't all, done up or glamorized for the part. That, it goes back to that authenticity again.
So in general, you think that cable is allowing for that authenticity more than?
Well, I don't want to say the network's inauthentic.
Right.
Is that the word? Inauthentic?
Well, I think there's some
But
good
I do
examples.
think, it just, broadcast network is trying to appeal to a much broader base. And when you do that, you're looking for ways to appeal to the most people. And often that manifests itself in saying, well, no, the woman, the lead needs to be sexy, or the two leads need to be sexy, or they're not hot enough, or.
Which is really unfortunate, because I actually don't, I think, not everybody can afford cable, or whatever reason it is, and I just think time and time again it's proven that find the best actor.
Yeah.
And
I love when people that are outside the mold become TV stars and become successful, because it's like reaffirming your faith in the audience. Like when remember when you first started thinking James Gandolfini was sexy? Like you were just like, I'm finding him sexy, and
Or Hugh Laurie, going back to Hugh Laurie.
yeah. But
Is he not?
No, I mean,
Is he not?
I
Sorry.
always, no, I'm sorry. I
Okay,
just meant
Sara.
I thought he was sexy before he was on House. That's what I meant.
that's weird.
Other people think he's sexy.
Wait a minute, I have to clarify this. I'm not saying that I don't find Hugh Laurie sexy. I thought he was sexy before the show.
Right.
But there's people that just like in life, did you ever show someone a picture in your yearbook and say, oh, she was the girl that everybody wanted? And they look and go, really? She was? Because it's one-dimensional and they're not getting it. But when somebody, it has to do with people's energy and spirit and a lot of different things.
I agree. Okay. If you were, okay, people, really? Okay. Right.
If I was
Okay, if you were
what kind of audition would I
auditioning
be?
actors in Los Angeles today, what would you be putting your focus? If you were an auditioning actor in Los Angeles today, what would you be putting your focus on? What would you invest your time in? And how would you talk yourself through the tough days? Let's start with the
Class,
first one.
be in class, be in class, be in class, always be in class. Sorry, I buzzed in first.
And be in class because you're surrounding yourself with other actors.
Yeah, and you're always working, and you're always preparing for when you do have an audition. If you're not in class and you have an audition, you're gonna be real nervous to go into that room. But if you just had class last night or this morning, or you're working on a scene, you're ready. You're ready to just go do another scene like you would in class.
And I think it's funny that you say this, because I think it's the same thing in casting when you're not, I've seen you when you're not on a show, when you're not working on a show and you're like, I need to be working, because because your brain is like.
Well, we forget, I forget sometimes, I cast in the last week's episode.
Right.
Like, what?
Yeah. If
Sorry.
Yeah. What about?
No, because I didn't have the mic here.
So class is what you would invest your time in if you're not, just in general. Anything else? Any other wise words?
I would just say, which is another version of that, is just be prepared. And for a lot of people that is studying, going to class, and for other people it might be another kind of preparation, but I think the best thing you can do is be prepared, not just because that helps your audition, but I think it also does help you. I think to come in more confident and self-assured if you come in feeling like you're prepared.
Well, if you have the ability to find a group of actors, I think that you can, if you have an audition coming up and you can say, can you run these lines with me, and and be specific about what you're seeing from me reading, how does it look, in a way?
And sometimes, like on my show, sometimes people will come in, oftentimes people will come in, and what they're reading for is part of the news show, and it's about a certain story, and they'll say, well, I went online and read about the real story or something. There's, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's
There's
a
things
historical
to do to be prepared
Right.
that are smart, that I'll just think, well, that was smart of them to.
I think the only danger of being prepared is being maybe a little over-prepared. You go to a coach. I've seen this happen all the time, especially with kids.
Yeah, with kids, it's a
they're
real
and they're
issue.
stuck. You're stuck in. My coach said to do it this way, and I think you don't.
Yeah,
you
but your
never
coach didn't read
No,
the
didn't read
script,
the
doesn't know
right.
what we know.
I know. We know this.
That's right.
We're educating the masses, and it's time and time again. It doesn't do them any good, and it's just you prepare so that you can kind of forget it when you get to the room, because new stuff might come up, and that's where the magic happens, is when the new stuff comes up. And how would you talk yourself through the tough days?
From the actor's
Yeah.
perspective?
From the casting director's perspective, please.
How do we talk ourselves
We'll talk
through a
for
tough day,
hours.
or how do you talk yourselves through a tough day?
Xanax.
What'd you say?
Xanax.
Yeah.
Takes me through the tough days. Really? No, I think it's a group. I think in general, it's finding a peer group that can take you through
Having
it.
something else to do.
Having something else to do, and and trying not to make it the
Only
focal
thing.
point and only thing, because it's not fair to yourself,
I think the more you have, the other things that you do in your life, it helps you in your work as an actor.
Right.
Reading a book or surfing or
volunteering, doing whatever, working, just having a job.
Yeah.
I think that it's funny that maybe in television, you have a limited time, obviously, for auditions, and you schedule people to come in. But I think it's important for people to be able to have a job to do and to call and say, I can't come in at this moment. Can I reschedule? And I find that a lot of actors get very nervous about rescheduling. It's like, what's the big, you're calling them in because you want them to come in. If they have to reschedule and you have time, you're going to reschedule them, right? In general?
Only if I have time, otherwise you better be there.
Right.
Well, sometimes too, you think you're going to have 2 days of auditions, and in the first day, the director stands up and says, that's
This
the
is the
guy.
person.
And then you got to call everybody that you said, no, it's okay.
But I think it's
We're
that
seeing
pressure
people tomorrow.
but I think the tough, the pressure of going in and saying, I have to go in, you're almost not prepared. If it's a big piece, if it's a big role on the show and you have a day to do it and you just don't know that you can do it, you're not going to be able to do it when you get there.
No. Well, you're not going to do it well, yeah.
Right. So know your, not necessarily know your limitations, but know how to do what's best for you.
Yeah, for sure. If a million things happen in your personal life and you didn't have time to look at the material and you're going to be late, and I do think it's better to just say, maybe not this time.
This is a question from Eric Silver. Raise your hand. No, I'm just kidding. Oh, there you are.
Hi,
Okay.
Eric.
Do you ever find yourself surprised by the unexpected places where you find performers? Are you finding performers in unexpected places?
Do
And
you
if
mean-
so, is it legal?
Well, it's an occupational hazard a little bit when you're a casting director, that if that comes up and you're talking to people in almost any walk of life, that they will either themselves or know someone or
I once stopped a girl at a makeup counter because I needed, John Levy and I were casting a pilot called Skin, and we needed 18 to play 16, and we read everybody, and there was this really adorable, cute girl who must have been maybe 19 or something. I stopped her at a makeup counter and asked her to self-tape. She didn't get it. But my point is, I'll go anywhere and talk to anybody at any time if I'm looking for somebody.
What about new media and like looking, like just, I expand this question, but like I find myself looking at web series a lot. You know, I call web series my new off Broadway because I mean, I love theater. I love going to the main, you know, houses here, but I really find that if I can see someone's work on screen, it's a little more helpful sometimes. Do you guys troll the web?
Definitely. And I think in general, all the people from producers to studio executives who hire people are looking at those things, especially in comedy. I cast, partnered with Allison Jones, the pilot of Parks and Recreation. And when we were working on that, Greg Daniels and Mike Shore, who are both very funny guys and very talented comedy writers, they would, you know, come in. My 13-year-old son saw this thing, and it would be these obscure things. And I'd think, God, I wonder if that kid even knows that, like, the executive producer of The Office is looking at this little thing he put online.
Are you kidding? I call my godson, who's 14 years old. I'm like, what are you watching?
Yeah.
I mean, I have to. I mean, it's part, and it's not television, by the way. He's watching YouTube. Yeah. You know, and so there's like a whole world out there of.
Which is another thing. Actors are always asking me, what can I do? What can I do to be put in front of casting directors? Create your own work. Just create your own work.
It's amazing the opportunities that you have now in terms of, you know, you're reading every day in the trades about somebody signing a deal that from some web series or some video or YouTube thing or something. And even if it doesn't get to that result, at least you're doing it. You know, you're not sitting home thinking of, oh, I have a great idea if someone would just let me do it. You know, just do it and see what it looks like.
Do you get to go to a lot of theater? Do you go out all the time? And we were talking about this. You're a big theater avid. Do you have a favorite company?
It's tougher when we're in production, obviously, because you just work late. But I try to see things around Los Angeles. I saw last Saturday, I saw the Wait Until Dark at the Gaffen. My cast will actually keep me very busy going just to see them and things. Because they're all theater actors and they're all Allison Pillis and Wait Until Dark. But yeah, as I said earlier, it's a nice way to get to know an actor by seeing them do something that full.
I agree. What do the actors do well in the audition room that makes you trust them and bring them back?
What do they do well?
Tone, like in terms of knowing the tone, or like being.
How do you keep? Why does somebody keep coming back? You know, you like actor. What are the things specifically that an actor does over and over again that makes you want to bring them back?
Sometimes people read and they're not right for what they're reading for, but you find them very watchable or intriguing or talented or whatever. I think it would be easy to answer the question in a way. It's almost, what would someone do that would make you not want to bring them back?
Right.
And it goes back to what we were talking about. If someone came in and they were sort of ill-prepared and
rude.
Yeah, that's
rude is a big one.
But if someone just comes in and they kind of leave and you're shaking your head, kind of saying, well, what was that about? You know.
I always think the ones that make me scared afterwards, the ones that scare me, like you know, because it happens. Yeah. See, she's like, like, you'd be surprised. I won't tell that story. I was hit by a bat.
Oh.
In an audition scene in a, you know.
I was kissed on the lips once.
Oh, was it good?
It was awesome. But I didn't see it. I didn't see it coming. But then you're like, is he crazy or is he brilliant?
It's like the perk of reading with the actor. You get to kiss the actor. I mean, you know, I find it hard for me when I'm reading a guy, and I'm supposed to be the female protagonist and the love interest. That I've actually stopped doing those readings because I find it a little awkward sometimes. I want them to have a girl. Is that bad?
Well, I say
kinda-
things like, before we start, I say things like, and don't really hit me. Or,
Right.
Yeah.
or
And
I'm
don't
not
kiss
going to
me.
try to establish before you start reading the scene, this physical action is not going to happen.
Necessary.
Because when it happened to me, I was very young when somebody did that to me in an audition. And I had read with like 1 million people.
Yeah.
And before it says, he kisses her goodbye or something. And it wasn't discussed because it was such a small thing. It wasn't an integral part of the scene or anything. And so I never said, we're not actually going to kiss. And all these people read it, and all of a sudden this guy started walking towards me saying, well, see, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, dear God, I think he's actually going to kiss me. And I could hear the producers giggling behind me. And I thought, oh, my God. And my face turned so red. It was awful. I was so embarrassed.
What about, actors have all different kinds of training, all different kinds of background, and I'm constantly telling actors that the audition space is a little different from what's going to happen on set or on stage. Sometimes actors come in very, I don't know, I guess you would call it method, and can you talk about for me, it's a job interview as much as it is about your talent and understanding the role. How do you, there's like a fine line between being in the moment at the very beginning of the scene. You want to kind of encourage people to, you know what I'm saying, right? Your scenes must be intense. Your scenes that you're auditioning are very intense scenes. How do they go from, hi, how are you, into?
I just say, take a minute, start whenever you're ready.
Do they actually take a minute? Because I find they take like 2 seconds.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like I've just said, take a minute, start whenever you're ready, and they feel like rushed into, and they aren't quite ready. We want you to succeed, and so if you need a moment, take a moment. I'll be here whenever you're ready.
Not 5 minutes.
No, not 5 minutes, and don't go, you don't need to do one of those.
Yeah, the same. The one thing I will say, the one piece of advice I will say is, if you get off on the wrong foot, or you start and you realize you weren't quite ready to start, you should stop and just say, may I please start again? Because there is nothing like somebody reading a 5-page scene.
Oh my God.
And as soon as they say the last line, they say, oh God, I was off there. Can I do it again? Because just for time element, it's like, really, just stop at the beginning and say, I'm sorry. And I'm telling you, there isn't 1 point deducted for that, for the biggest producer, director in the room.
No.
Everybody would rather you just stop and say, I'm sorry, I got off on the wrong foot. I'm going to start again.
But people must be nervous with Sorkin because it's so specific with the language. So
and he reads with people a lot.
Oh my God. Really?
Yeah.
That would scare
That would.
the crap out of me.
It either, there's two general reactions. Either it's, you're going to read with me? Oh, wow. Or else it's, you're going to read with me? Like and it works either, people either are energized by it, because, it's great fun, because the person who wrote the lines is saying them the way that he intended them to be said in his head.
It's a huge gift,
so
really.
It's great. But the other side of it is people just becoming very, very nervous when they're reading with them.
I'm nervous for them right now.
I know.
And it's the worst when an actor comes in nervous, because you just almost want to say, just go outside and chill out and come back in.
I've done that. I've told people, take a minute, go outside, and let's regroup.
Right.
One part of my kind of process that I try to maintain all the time is I just try to make people feel as comfortable as they can and set up the situation so they feel as comfortable as they can. Because I don't feel like people can do their best if they're not in an atmosphere And I never understand when actors tell me that they went to an office and the people were like hostile to them.
Who
Or
are
bad
these
readers,
people?
or bad readers. I don't get casting. If you don't like reading with actors, just hire some. There's so
Exactly.
many. Everybody in this room here would be a reader in a casting office.
Right.
And you know, I just don't
I
think,
always read, yeah.
I just don't think anybody does their best work under those circumstances.
I'm
so-
wiped after a session because I feel like I'm giving my all to as a reader, right?
Well, I don't know about your audition rooms. Mine is like on the 405. It's on Wilshire Boulevard, so it's kind of like auditioning in New York. There's a siren. There's a, there's something every 10 seconds. Like there's the girls from the high school going, "I gotcha," whatever it is. I don't know what they're saying. They're 13. I don't understand. But so there's a lot of extra activity happening outside the receptionist is saying something, or there's other projects being cast at the same time. Tuning that out is really important, being able to.
Well, we just keep stepping outside the hall and saying, keep it down back there. But yeah, and when that happens, again, like I said when I was telling the Chris Maloney story, you can sort of see that someone's thrown. And I'll stop them, and I'll say, I'm so sorry, let me go tell them to turn, the power drill off or whatever is happening on the other side of the wall.
I can't tell the fire station number 96 to turn it down. It's very complicated. But to that point, it's like letting those, like if actors are coming in and something external is happening, it's like you almost give them more, you're almost rooting for them more if they can get through those moments, because if they're really concentrating. Okay. What do the actors do well in the audition room that makes you trust them and bring, I did that. Can we delete that from the live stream?
It's live. It's live. It's live.
Oh,
He
YouTube.
answered it a completely different way. That'd be funny.
Let's answer in Spanish, quick. Hey, this is from Mark Cirillo. Both, but specifically for Newsroom. Sorry, Sarah.
It's okay.
When you're on a hit show, especially written by someone like Aaron Sorkin, what percentage of roles are offers versus actual reads? Also, on self-tapes, do you ever send them more scenes? After, I guess, they've auditioned for that one scene.
I'm trying to think about the percentage. I'm very lucky on this show because Alan Poole, who's our other executive producer, who has worked on 1 million shows, and Scott Rudin in New York, who weighs in, all know a lot of actors. So it's like what we were talking about with Frank Wood. I'm sure there's shows I could have worked on where his name might have come up and people would say, well, he's going to have to read because I don't know. But all 3 of them had seen him in plays. And so I would say on my show, the bigger roles are usually offers. The Hope Davis, the Marcia Gay Harden, at the bigger roles and the roles that are going to recur. But we have a lot of readings in our office. We see a lot of people for the smaller roles because they're very, even the smallest roles are so well written and they're full characters, even if they just have a few lines. And so we actually, we try to have a lot of readings for the smaller roles. And we actually have readings for the bigger roles sometimes too, but if you're asking me percentage-wise, I think most of the time the biggest roles are offers.
And so how does that work? You create the list, you get the avails, and...
Yeah.
And that,
I mean, I don't, usually, again, because they're so knowledgeable about actors, it's usually not even a big, obviously I've made lists, but sometimes it's just a conversation.
Right.
You mention 2 or 3 names and everybody gets on the phone, everybody gravitates towards the same name, and then you go there.
And with the self-taping of the scenes, if someone's self-taped, do you redirect them and say, can you give me
I would say if there's time, and if I watched somebody put themselves on tape, there's also the difference between, sometimes people are putting themselves on tape at my request, some of them specifically interested in for a part, and so I'm very invested in, that it was an idea I had, so I obviously think they could do it. And so if I feel like they got off on the wrong foot or they didn't benefit from having any direction because they're not here, I'll have them do it again or give them notes or, but if somebody, depending on the time frame, if I just got some and I was looking at them, if somebody didn't get it or was off base about the direction of the scene, I probably wouldn't have time to
And you said
go back
you have
and-
8 days. How many, right?
Yeah, but for the pilot debates, there were a handful of actors that we had self-tape again.
How long did it take to actually cast the pilot? How many weeks were you
6?
from start to finish? It was just.
6 weeks, maybe?
Is that quick?
Kind of guessing. Well, I think 7 weeks is typical of a pilot, or at least my last pilot I did in 7 weeks. Is that not?
I don't
know.
It depends on if you're trying to make a date or not.
Right.
I guess.
I think we did Bates in 6 or 7 weeks, maybe more.
And then per
I mean,
episode, how much time do you have?
8 if we have a script on time, but I've never had a script on day 1 of prep.
Wow.
No, I'm sorry. I take that back. Different show. Bates, I have scripts so ahead of time. So, like.
For season 2 as well.
For season 2, yeah. And I'll look at a call sheet and I'm like, they're still shooting. Like, I would think that, like, we're past a role or we haven't started shooting a role yet, but because our scripts came in really early, like, the last script I read was like a month ago and they're just now starting to shoot it.
And Nancy, how much time do you have?
Again, it depends. It's not so much the amount of days of the episode as to when you get the material. When I started Newsroom, Aaron had written a lot of scripts in advance. Towards the end of the season, sometimes they came in a little later, quite frankly. But, it's because he writes them all himself. So.
Do you get real sides? Can you use sides from the script?
Yeah.
What about you?
On Bates, yes.
Yeah.
But we're careful not to pull any sides that reveal anything. It's like what you were talking about before. Sometimes you can't tell people on the phone or whatever. They'll say, well, what? I don't understand why he says this in the scene. And then you're thinking, oh, that's because later we're going to find out this, but you can't really say it up front.
Gotcha.
It's tricky.
Well, you two have been amazing tonight. Thank you so much.
Are we
Thank
finished?
you. Are we done? Done.
Thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.